Welcome. Here we are live again. Joao, how are you? So good to see you.
Hello. Hi, guys. Hi, Laura. I'm doing amazing. How are you?
I'm well. I feel like I am, just living life.
That's a good sign. Can you imagine if you weren't living life?
Oh, good thing. Good thing I'm still here. Good thing I'm still living the life.
But are you? Are you really here?
I'm not always actually, and that's quite an issue. I'm working on being more grounded and more present and more embodied and not checked out. But checked out looks different many different ways. Like my checkout is in like, oh, check out. I don't want to, engage with people, but like more like I prefer to be in another realm, you know.
We had this conversation before,
Yeah.
and something that I've just noticed, and I connected the dots. Every time you talk about you need to be grounding yourself, you look up.
Well,
Like,
maybe grounding for me isn't on the earth. Maybe I have to ground in another way.
there you go. You did it again.
Ah, help me down here.
This is hard.
Yeah, nobody talks about it though. Nobody talks about how challenging it is. Everybody just puts on the happy face and pretends life is great. Yeah, work's good. The kids are good. Yeah, everybody's good. And it's like, ugh, you know,
A glass of wine. Have two glasses of wine.
have a couple of glasses, have another glass of wine. Let's get the edge off. But sometimes I wish I was drinking wine.
It would be an easy way out, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
But not the way.
I
Hopefully.
know. Just because I choose different practices doesn't mean I don't have the temptation to drink wine or rely on drugs or cigarettes to kind of take the edge off,
Okay. Are we going there? No, not today.
Not today, not today.
What do you want to discuss today?
Well, I think we should, continue this discussion that we had. We started it last week on the wounds and the masks that we face. And I think this is really all in alignment to what we're talking about because there are reasons we turn to these other things rather than turn inward and heal some of these wounds, heal some of these aspects of ourselves that we don't even maybe know that are there. You have to be willing and courageous to look. And that's why I think that's why this conversation is powerful because it gives people an opportunity to look at these pieces. I mean, honestly, Joao, even last week when we talked about rejection and how the the mask for the wound of rejection is to be a runner. Um, I answered the question and I explored it while we were talking, but I left the conversation still reflecting on it. And I was thinking, maybe rejection is deeper and more there than I even realize or name. And like I had to explore that within myself. So even though I'm talking about it and I'm bringing it to the table, I'm also reflecting myself on where these pieces might be. So it's interesting.
Well, it happened exactly the same thing as well with me. And also because during therapy, we were actually discussing like issues with bonding. Um, and it could potentially be related to the rejection wound that I might have, might not have. So it actually it's time sensitive that we started discussing this. I don't know. It's one of those things that keep happening to us. Like all of a sudden, we're discussing a a subject that it's actually what we needed to hear today, like our daily dose. That's how we met on Daily Dose. We were talking about that yesterday.
Yeah, we were talking about that yesterday. How there was an app called Clubhouse, and it's a voice app where you can enter into certain rooms and talk about different discussions depending on what the room is. And uh, a dear friend of mine, AJ, and I started a daily room called the Daily Dose, and that's how we met Joao. Joao popped in and sprinkled his love all up in that conversation, and it was beautiful. Here we are.
3 years later, we're here.
Yeah, 3 years later. Isn't that wild? What a journey.
Yeah. Well, so you were saying, and to piggyback on what you were saying, I just love to use these terms. We started this discussion on the five wounds. It's actually based on a book written by Lise Bourbeau, a Canadian lady, and she writes a lot about this stuff. And it's always very, I would say, somatic, because it does connect whatever emotion, feeling, any mental aspect that you might have to your body. And throughout the book, you understand that it will be explained on these five wounds, how in the body and how the body actually reacts to that and presents that to the world as well. We did have that when we were talking about rejection, and this week we're going to talk about the wound of abandonment, which is, I'm sure a lot of you might sense or feel that this could be something that you feel or have. Going through this talk, it might sound like, oh, maybe it's not. But as we said previously, let this be like a food for thought. Nothing that we say here is this is a conversation. So we're just going to be discussing what Lise has written on the book. And together with the wound, there's always a mask that people wear so that the ego can avoid the pain of the wound. And for the abandonment, typically the mask is a person that is dependent. So they will carry out this mask with them because they feel like they have the wound of abandonment throughout time. So just to clarify, what the author says related to abandonment is as simple as the mother or the father of a child has a lot of work. It's not very present, but every night he's there, she is there. They have dinner together, but because that parent wasn't present throughout the day, the child might feel abandoned. And this is just the feeling that the child has. Does that not mean that the parent actually has done that on purpose, or that he or she intended to abandon the child? Nowadays we see that both, so children have both working parents, so it's more than normal that child are left either to they go into nursery to school, so they don't spend the weekday during the day with their parents, but the child might feel like that. Another typical example is, for example, a child might feel abandoned when there's a second child or a third child, so the mother will be focusing more attention into the newborn, so it sets aside a little bit of the energy and the attention that was supposed to be for the child that was already born. So that one might feel abandoned as well. So it's, and simple things like, for example, if you take your child to the hospital, and during COVID, you weren't allowed to actually be at the hospital, you have to leave your child there. And because they feel like they need attention, they can't get it because the world doesn't work like they want it to work. They might feel abandoned. And the attention bit is where you link this to your dependency. So you become a dependent because you crave attention. You are going to wear a mask that will basically be telling people that you're always needing help. You're always needing it. And it doesn't need to be like physical help. It can be just support or being there for someone. Or for example, if doing something together, that's some sort of attention that a dependent person will want, but they can't actually function fully when they are on their own because they're afraid of loneliness, of solitude. Let's put it that way, because it reminds them of the time they were abandoned. So basically, this is the high level helicopter view about the wound of abandonment and the mask of dependency. What say you?
Well, I appreciate you sharing all of that and breaking down the different aspects of the book. And um, I think it's important to say that a child isn't thinking, "Oh, I've been abandoned," or even with our last wound, "Oh, I've been rejected." Like that vocabulary isn't there, and it's more of like you said, a feeling, but a feeling that can't be named. So even if a child is feeling that way, it's not like they can express it. And so I think that's where, if you're a parent, you can kind of see these masks coming up, and then you can address the mask. So, like for example, if a child is feeling abandoned and they're more dependent, the dependent might look like they're needy, and a lot of times parents or people will say, "Oh, they're so needy," as if it's like a bad thing, but essentially it's showing something. Just the same with rejection, the runner. Like runner is a behavior that's showing something. And I've worked with kids 0 to 6 for many, many years, and even youth at risk in different environments at schools. And um, a lot of times the adults will see behaviors from the kids, and they make those behaviors wrong, and they make the child wrong. And it's really sad to watch that, because a child doesn't have the ability to express the language in which they're feeling or what's going on for them. And so they literally show it through behaviors. So when you see a behavior, it's so important as an adult to get curious, to be like Sherlock Holmes and put on the hat and get out the magnifying glass and kind of explore what could be triggering this behavior. So I've worked with it's interesting, like I'm thinking about the extreme of abandonment and dependentment, where uh, children will literally be abandoned by their parents, left alone. CAS being involved, child and youth workers being involved, and being part of that situation, and seeing how much it doesn't matter how much the parent isn't there for that child, how much they want them. It doesn't matter the abuse and the abandonment of the extreme, the significance of the dependency that the child will have on that parent, and how forgiving kids are for these situations. It's incredible. But it's very easy to look outside of yourself and be like, oh, these extreme situations, and oh yes, kids, but we have to recognize, where is this in ourselves, and how does this behavior show up in our relationships, how does this behavior show up in our workplace, in our life, and in within ourselves. you know um, I can think of stories where I felt abandoned as a child. Not that my parents ever, deliberately wanted that to happen. Like, I remember getting lost in a store one time and feeling like panicking over that. Like things like this. But there are moments where your caregiver just can't be there for you in the way that you expect them to be there for you, assume they'll be there for you, and then the the result of that is some version of emptiness. And so to feel abandoned, and to have the mask of dependent, feeling dependent on other people, like you need validation from someone, that you need someone else to tell you that you are a certain way, or someone else to tell you that you're doing well, or somebody else to be there for you to support you, rather than as an adult to be able to hold that space for yourself. And it's like we depend on other people. We really depend on a partner, depend on a parent, depend on a friend, depend on somebody outside of ourselves to fill that need. And it's great to have strong, powerful relationships around you that can, but at the same time, you have to have some self exploration within you to where's that need coming from? And can I fulfill that within myself as an adult now? How can I be whole within myself? Is there a way to heal these wounds? Or do we have to have an external version of that as humans? And, this is a conversation, I suppose, that's one to be explored. Does it have to be healed through relationship? Or can it be healed through the relationship with yourself?
Wow. And can you actually heal that by having a conversation with your parents or your caregivers and explain to them, like, listen, this is not something that you did on purpose, but this is how I feel, this is how I felt, and that's why I behave like this. And maybe because they're dependent, maybe they could ask for help from them as well. Typically these children, or the dependent person, will always be the victim. They will tend to have this martyr kind of feeling, and everything that they feel is like any situation or bad situation that happens to them, it's like the end of the world. Like if they don't get anything, if they can't, I don't know, if they get traffic, if they don't get the promotion, if they don't have the specific product that they're looking for at the supermarket, then it's like the world is going to end, and I need this because I can't stand my life if I don't have this. And it's very, very difficult, because then these issues and these problems for them, they take this huge proportion and they can't see anything past this. And sometimes, as the book says, when people are trying to help, they're so blinded by this need of having the attention, or the expectation that the attention should look like this and should feel like that, they can't see that they're actually being helped, which kind of long term will isolate them from people, which is exactly the opposite of what they need, because they need to be helped. They need to be supported. They need someone to be there with them, doing things together, like exercise, like eating, like going on a walk. Like they need someone to actually, not that they're not capable of doing it, but they feel like it's more meaningful because I have the attention, so I feel better if I do it with someone. And if there's no one to do it with, then I'll just stay home, or I'll just be doing whatever I'm doing that I like, work. And a lot of them, they do become workaholics because that's where their focus goes to. And this actually makes them have like a roller coaster of emotions. They're either like really happy, and all of a sudden they feel sad, they feel anger, they feel like they're alone, and there's no apparent reason for that to happen. And yet again, people around them, they don't understand them, so they will feel like, what's happening? And they can't explain it either, because that's who they are, that's who they believe they are. That's the mask they're wearing, and they wear it so well that it's like glued to their essence, which is not actually their essence. So interesting to ask or to start asking is, what if I allow myself to any activity that I would do with someone, like I'm going to do it myself. Today, I'm going to become just 1% independent, um, and see how you feel. Is it something that is easy? Do you feel anything in your body, like a pain, or do you feel like the discomfort in your shoulder or pain on your knee? Like, try to link that to whatever you're feeling in your body, so that you remember next time when you feel it, then you know the link to your emotion. And it's basically trial and error, right? Were you going to say something?
I'm just wanted to kind of pull out this dependent versus independent. And you shared some highlights, like some, if it's very hard, I think, for people to name these aspects within themselves. So, like themes of isolation, themes of high highs and low lows, themes of um, maybe expectations of how people should be a certain way around you. Um, these are all themes that you're naming to look at. So then it's like, are you dependent on other people? Is it a distorted dependency, or is it a healthy dependency? And then your independence, is it a distorted independence, or is it a healthy independence? And so if the mask is dependent and you were to take off the mask, what would be left? What is that wholeness? I like how they call them masks, because they're placed on. And sometimes, I don't know if you've ever played a character before, or even Halloween, where you put on that mask and you put on that costume and you embody that costume, and you take on the voice and you take on the gestures, and you become whatever the mask is portrayed. So we don't realize that when we become the masks, that we think it's who we are, but it's not actually who we are. So if you were to take off that mask, then what would be underneath it? Is it a child who feels abandoned? Is it a part of you that feels empty or alone, isolated? And if you're radically honest with yourself, what is it that you think that you need? Can you provide that love, that attention that you are seeking, that attentiveness, that care, that nurture for yourself? Can you clearly communicate it to the people in your life of where you're at and what you might need, versus assume or expect and then feel disappointed or angry or frustrated by the people around you? So to take off the mask, take off that distortion, and what is it that's left? What is that? Maybe it's not wholeness. Maybe it's an emptiness. So then what do you need to fill that up? What do you need to explore a part of you that was wounded along the way? And that's the thing, is I think it's important to normalize the wounds along the way. We're human beings, and we have this heart that we of love, and we feel and we sense, and we're vulnerable in this world. And then we go through experiences that create hurt or pain or discomfort. And then the wound occurs, and the wound is open. And if it happens again, then it's like going into an open wound. And then all of a sudden, that's why the mask gets put on, to protect those layers, to protect the part of you that doesn't want to feel pain, that doesn't want to feel hurt, discomfort. But then the more masks we put on, the less we feel at all. Then we can't actually feel the love that we're craving. We can't actually feel the joy that we really truly want. Can't actually feel the peace that we hope exists, because we've shut off from feeling altogether. So these are deep layers to unpack. It's not just, oh, have you ever been abandoned? Nope, I can't remember. So yeah, this isn't my mask. It's like, really, really dig and see if you can start to watch patterns in yourself, patterns of isolation, patterns of dependency, patterns of, maybe dependent and then disappointed, like, these pieces of themes that occur. Um, so a friend of mine and I were doing a webinar at the beginning of August on Venus in retrograde, and she's going to be talking about the astrology aspect, like what does it mean when a planet's in retrograde, what are the themes of Venus, the planet of love. It's going to be in Leo, so what are the themes of Leo? And then I'm going to be creating the kind of the support through the retrograde, like uh, the tools on being able to navigate the themes. So some of the themes are self image, your self confidence, your self worth, all these pieces. And so I created a workbook on all of this, and I've been working. I actually did the workbook, and I've been digging into these themes within myself the past week, and it's so fascinating because you can go as deep as you're willing and desire to go to heal. And if you don't have to, right? You can still operate in life with the masks. You can still function in life from that place. Everything's fine. Everything's good. You can function, highly function actually, without fulfillment, with that hollowness inside of you, that emptiness. And you can continue these patterns in your relationships, and you can continue these stories and these themes over and over and over again. It's just a different person that you play it out with, just another character in the story that you've created. But what an empty life that is. I really encourage to have the courage and bravery to go deeper within yourself on these themes and explore.
Absolutely. It's something that actually the book also mentions, that if you're always so dependent on other people, how are you presenting to yourself? How's your focus? How is your attention focus to the self? Because your mind is always what the other people can do for me in order for me to feel good, but what can I actually do for me, instead of craving attention. And it's something that you need to go through a process of, as you were saying, taking the mask, right? But also trying to understand, like, for example, the dependent person is very touchy, and it's always like glued to people that they love and physically touching. But do they do that with themselves? Do they hug themselves? Do they kiss themselves, like their shoulder, their hands, their arms, their knees? Like, do they actually say "I love you" to you, like directly to the mirror? And those are just little tools, right, that you can implement. But how do you do them, and how you feel when you do them will tell you a lot about what's the process that you need to start doing or continue doing, in order to physically love yourself as well, and that brings you into the now as well. You're not expecting in the future that other people might do or not do something that you crave, but you're actually looking the now, what you need. And it's basically a win-win situation. If you start implementing these. But another thing that the book mentions throughout, it's always this sadness that the abandoned, or the dependent person has, that if they don't get the attention, if they don't get what they are craving, then, as you were saying, they feel like they're not worth it. They don't have this self-worth compass, because everything, or mostly everything that happens, will have to come from others. That external love, or external validation, or external support. And if that, imagine that's why their fear, the most fearful thing that they have is loneliness, because everything failing, they have to deal with themselves. and that's when that's where the process starts. It's when you're by yourself at night, for example. If you go to bed, do you leave your light on, or are you actually able to sit in the dark? And not that this is like a characteristic of it, but it's something that it will make you start thinking of, do I need the company of light, or am I actually able to sit in the dark? And if you extrapolate that to the mentally or the spiritual world, then do you always have to have a light on, or are you comfortable sitting in the dark and see all of those shadows that remain and talk to them and have a conversation and understand them? You don't have to take them away, but maybe just see them. It's difficult to see in the dark, right? As they say.
Yeah, and it's very metaphorical to be able to sit in your own darkness, in your own shadows, in your own wounds, in your own masks, and be with them rather than try to stuff them down or pretend that they're not there. Can you bring the light to your shadows, essentially? And not metaphorically. At night, are are you falling asleep with peace in your mind and love in your heart? Are you stressed and worried? Are you frustrated, angry? Um, are you distressed, unsettled in some way, empty in some way, or tears falling down your face when you're resting your head on your pillow? And these are the pieces that only you know. Nobody around you can know that. Nobody around you can um, see those aspects of yourself. Only you can. And it's up to you to see them and bring them to the surface, and then communicate to the people around you if that's necessary in the moment. But to recognize, like, don't be afraid of yourself. Don't be afraid of your shadows. That's, all of these pieces are characteristics that made you who you are, but at the end of the day, it's not who you are. Take off the mask and start to discover who you truly are. The essence of love and joy and that open heart that we come here with as a child, to tap back into that. And yes, there will be pain, and there will be challenges, and there will be struggles. And yes, you're going to want to turn to wine and drugs and all these pieces to turn it all off. But put those substances to the side and allow yourself to just be with yourself. Be the comfort you're seeking, be the love that you're seeking, be the nurture that you're seeking, and watch how that will reflect in your relationships. The more you do that, the more it will become part of your experience outside of yourself as well. Well, another beautiful conversation, Joao.
Yes. Oh, let me just show people the book. Something like this. This is in Portuguese, but there's the English version as well, and I'm sure the French version. Yeah. It's just,
And the name of it in English, you want to let them know?
It's the 5 wounds that prevent happiness.
The 5 wounds that prevent happiness. So we will continue the conversation with the third one next week. Thank you for being here with us, joining us in this discussion. And we hope that you take time to reflect on it and be radically honest with yourself. Yeah. And if you need support, you can always reach out. Always, always, always.
Yes. And if you have any questions, just leave your comments here. We'll get round to answer them as much as we can. And we can do also follow up and just start these conversations with you guys. As we said, this is very informal. It's full of love and pure heart that we have this, based also on our experiences and the way we see the world. But it's for you guys. So just keep in touch.
All right, much love, everyone. Have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.